Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. We have back on the line one of the ultimate truth tellers in the universe. Her name's Sofia Smallstorm, and you know her work very well. All credit due to Sofia. She's the mind behind incredible documentaries like 9/11 Mysteries, Unraveling Sandy Hook in 2, 3, 4, and 5 dimensions, which she dedicated to America and to all YouTubers involved in the process of waking up the world to the Sandy Hook hoax. She's also the mind behind From Chemtrails to Pseudo-Life, Part 1, Synthetic Biology, and Part 2, Radiation Biology, which are must-watch videos. Sofia, welcome.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's my thrill. You know, I'm one of your biggest fans. You really dissect things from the inside out. And with all credit due to Mike Williams over at the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, I was listening to your recent interview with Mike called Understanding the Corporate Fiction. And it really is the topic we should be discussing today. And ironically, in one of my last videos, Sofia, the one with Christina Sarich about GMOs and vaccines, there was a comment that appeared over on YouTube from somebody who said, until you start talking about the corporate fiction, until you start talking about corporate personhood and the fact that the U.S. government is a corporation, you're just spinning your wheels. And ironically, I already had you scheduled to talk about that very issue. So, Sofia, welcome, and where should we start?
Well, people always say, what can we do? What can we do? And so far, we've urged them to know, to talk, to search and research the reality. And when I really began to understand this corporate fiction thing, and then a second leg of it, it just hit me that this is the only recourse we really have in what I call the third dimensional world. So just to tell you briefly, uh, they can't, I'll just use that word, they can't touch us except through this thing called our legal fiction. They have no right or claim to our flesh and blood bodies. And what has happened is every being has been incorporated, and every agency we have now, and every local government, police department, whatever, water district, they're all incorporated, towns and cities, and they're all proud to be incorporated. And this first began, I learned, my source of information has been Anita Whitney of anticorruptionsociety.com. So that website contains a huge amount of information, and you can poke through it at your leisure. I recommend that everybody start understanding this. So the easiest way to understand it is to know that in 1871, the real United States of America, the real America, vanished. And it was replaced with this incorporated government, which included Washington District of Columbia. So the federal government became a corporation. And by 1933, with Roosevelt sitting in office, the whole corporate system was washed down like a big Niagara Falls into all the cities, the states, the agencies. That's when the reality really fleshed itself out in this fictitious form. So today, you can check on Dun and Bradstreet. It's a commercial registry of corporations, and you'll find your water district there. You'll find, oh gosh, your town, your police department, whatever. It's all listed there. There are a few people who are still living in unincorporated towns, but that's vanishing too. So where we are now is that we have you can think of them as companies posing as our government. And nowhere are we represented. Our interests are for the birds, really. So what do these local corporations do that claim to represent us? All that corporations do is engage in business and commerce and contracts. And that's really all they're doing. So I can explain how that really plays out in our lives, if you would like. or you can throw in, your own comments or questions.
Yeah, no, please do, because I'm no expert in this area. Although I do understand that the United States is a corporation. I understand that Washington D.C. is roughly the equivalent of the Vatican or the City of London being its own private entity. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but this is not a representative government anymore. As you noted in an email to me, it's purely commercial, and that explains why we don't have representatives, and that explains why our representatives appear to be so corrupt. They are corrupt, but they don't represent us. They represent the corporation.
Right. Now, they're not necessarily corrupt when they go in. A lot of people probably want to do good and they run for city council, but once they get elected, they are now officers of a corporation. Anyone who works for a city is an employee of a corporation. They aren't public servants in any way, and they cannot act as such. They are bound by the rules of the corporations they're working for, the rules and regulations. So, what do these local corporations do that claim to be our towns and cities, local governments? They get corporate grant contracts. That's all they exist for. So, the federal government, which is this, I call it the mothership, right? The federal government, as we know, is trillions and trillions in debt. Does it care? No. The federal government is like the big mouth that receives all this fiat money in the form of contracts, and it then waves at all the cities and towns, and it tells them, hey, everyone, we have this much money for this many projects that I always use the fluoride treatment plant because that actually happened where I live. We have this many millions of dollars for 10 super duper fluoride treatment plants. Who wants one? And every city and town today wants to be showcased as progressive, having the first this, the biggest that. So they are literally New World Order Agenda 21 projects and programs that are offered and then awarded as corporate grant contracts to our cities and towns who all want to be the first. And so that money, which is millions of dollars, it's applied for first. There's an application for grant that comes in. It could be a road project. It could be a community park. But I want people to know this is not taxpayer money. We are allowed to think that it is because that makes us mad. Because we look at other things that are declining and rotting and falling apart. And we go, why isn't our taxpayer money being used to fix this? This is New World Order, Rothschild money, call it what you want. It comes straight from the banks. Mm-hmm. And you know that it's just digitized. That's all it is. It's not based on anything. So the reality is that at the bottom of the pyramid, there are loads of people who want the work. Everybody loves federal contracts. They all want to build. They all want to do. They all want to create and install. There are developers. There are all the subcontractors, all the people who need work, people who need stuff to do, because otherwise they will not be able to survive. And so it's we on the bottom level of the pyramid. Many of us engage in these activities, and we're really installing the face of the New World Order Agenda 21 in our own lives through this corporate grant contract system that's coming down the government pipeline.
Now, in your interview with Mike Williams, one of the things that I found particularly shocking, but it makes a lot of sense, Sophia, because anybody who's watched your documentary Unraveling Sandy Hook in 2, 3, 4, and 5 dimensions knows that was a FEMA capstone event. You're the one who really uncovered that. And one must ask, how do these types of operations come around? And I know that you'll eventually get to that. Let me ask you this before we get there. Are you saying that the money that is funding these Agenda 21 policies that we see rolling out now in earnest in California is coming from places even beyond the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports, all the hidden money, the millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that's off book in these states, counties, and cities? It's coming from an even more shadowy source. It's coming from the bankers themselves.
So just to get back to the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report is a record of the monies held by various you could call them cities, towns, agencies. And
Hmm.
as I have heard, you can find this online. And what's horrifying researchers, alternative researchers, is we've got cities and towns telling us they're broke. And then you look in their comprehensive annual financial report and you see a lot of money sitting there.
Hmm.
Well, I did pose a question to someone in a local agency, you can call it, and I was told that that money is earmarked. It's money, it's project money, and it has to be set in reserve because these projects take a long time. So you can't plan a project and then go, where's the money 3 years later, and you have to actually write the checks. So let's say you get a corporate grant for whatever it is, a park, you have to put that money aside and it's put in a reserve fund. This is what the CAFR really is. It's money that has already been earmarked for certain uses that might take a while. A fluoride plant will not be built overnight. A community center with all these, glorious, huge amenities, it doesn't get built overnight. You've got to have that money in reserve. So the money itself is not taxpayer money. The money is project and program money. And to speak on Sandy Hook and these other shootings, Sandy Hook, if it was indeed a capstone event, the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA are government agencies. They are incorporated in just the same way. So if they scheduled and structured and set up a capstone event, all that has been funded. It was planned years in advance. And the money was paid out for it. And this is why you're seeing awards going to families. You're seeing huge contracts for the new school in Sandy Hook. This is all part of the corporate grant.
Now, that may be shocking to people, but it does make a lot of sense that there's contracts that are put out that are bid on. And, in the shadow government, in the deep state, as Peter Dale Scott calls it, I think you'd have to be naive to believe these things don't go on. Because what happened on 9/11 didn't happen by accident. It was orchestrated over a period of years. And it culminated in what we saw on the morning of 9/11, which, of course, you've documented better than just about anybody in 9/11 Mysteries. And the shadow government, the deep state, operates in the shadows in ways that would make people's toes curl. And just getting back to these CAFRs, I want to give credit to Walter Burien, who is really the one who essentially uncovered what is one of the largest scams being played on Americans as politicians fail to report trillions in assets under these comprehensive annual financial reports, these CAFRs. So again, all part of the deep state and all part of the way that the government, quote unquote, corporation, controls we the people, right?
Right. And, our city councils don't know necessarily what they're approving. As these applications are made, they are the result of somebody giving a glossy summary of a project or a program to the city council. And those glossy summaries don't disclose the real nature of the program, what it's really about. We've got stacked housing coming, as I'm sure you have as well. Everywhere you go now, they're building things like new Whole Foods are going up everywhere, and there are a couple of levels of apartments over them. Well, that's going to end up being much higher and higher and higher as time goes by because they're actually moving us all into these concentrated urban environments where they're going to be allowing us. I just heard this from someone yesterday who was attending a city council meeting recently. They want us to work and play and live in the same area.
Yep.
And this is about population concentration. This is the face of Agenda 21. And it all sounds good. You won't have to commute. If anything, you can get on your bike and you can pedal a few minutes. But that too is the nature of the new world that's coming to us. A world in which few people will have cars, most people will be on foot or bikes, and most people will not be from here. There's an a population swap going on as well. There's a reason that the architecture of southern Spain is being restored to its Moorish flavor. The Moors were from North Africa. The immigration into Spain is largely from North Africa. So they are getting foreigners who don't have the kinds of assets. You could call them immigrants, refugees. They are getting those people comfortable in these new surroundings. Immigrants who don't have cars and have never had cars will not mind biking or walking.
Well, that's correct. And you're absolutely right about Agenda 21 policies. They're being rolled out in earnest now in California under the guise and under the cover of this engineered drought. And it needs to be said that one of the best YouTubers out there covering Agenda 21 and dedicating himself to the coverage of Agenda 21, including going to the city council meetings in California, in the various cities, and documenting what the stakeholders are doing when they're there to make sure that their Agenda 21 policies are being put into place, is Grindall61. You guys can check this out on YouTube. I'm going to spell it for you, Grindall 61. He does a fantastic job covering UN Agenda 21 policies, and all of his videos add up to the quantifiable, which we've seen in the documents, of course, Sophia, which is, you're right, they want to hoard people out of the suburbs, out of the rural areas. They want to make all of that off limits to human beings. They want to herd everybody into these centralized major cities, and they want people to live in teeny tiny little footprints where it's not about quality of life, it's about quality of place. And I say that specifically because that's what the Agenda 21 culprits say. They want to destroy our way of living. And it all comes full circle for me, Sophia, when I think of Bill Gates in his TED Talk, in which he talked about the absolute necessity of reducing our carbon footprint to zero emissions. He wants that as fast as possible. And until and unless we get new energy sources, new technologies, that will mean we will all live as serfs. There will be no cars, there will be bikes. You may not have central air conditioning. You may not even have a fan, live with the heat. They are setting up a true prison planet for us through these Agenda 21 policies.
Correct. And the thing is, their only noose through which and by which they can reel us and pull us into all this is our consent, our signature. They really only can touch us, Sean, I've learned now, through what's called the legal fiction of the self, the straw man. Your name in capital letters, as shown on your short form birth certificate, is your straw man. And every time you sign a contract, if you look at your bank statements, that's all in capital letters, your name. If you look at your driver's license, this is you having contracted with these agencies through your fictitious name and your straw man, your legal fiction. When we're born, we all are issued a long form birth certificate by the hospital, and then that is somehow turned by the county. It's very Masonic. It's religious almost. 3 days later, the county issues the short form. I've been told that they're actually killing your live birth self and turning it into this dead, fictitious self. And everybody gets this short form birth certificate. And then, with their name in capital letters presented to them, they show up and admit and agree and consent to being enjoined to that legal fiction. And that's what dogs you your entire life. It's your signature is your instrument of connection.
Well, I've heard that, and I've heard that your birth certificate is essentially your stock certificate, or should I say their stock certificate. You are nothing more than cattle in this corporate fiction, and you're an asset. You're an asset to the bankers. And, that's the scariest damn thing I can think of, but it makes sense because these people don't value us as human beings. They certainly don't value our human sovereignty. They don't respect our sovereignty, our God-given sovereignty. They don't respect the Bill of Rights. They don't respect any of the things that makes us human beings. We're human resources to them.
Right. Now, I'm reading this booklet, Lawfully Yours, which has been tailored by anticorruptionsociety.com, and you can find it. There's actually a menu tab there. I would tell everyone, Look at that PDF. Just read it at your leisure, and you'll understand a lot of things. It's taken from the original writing by a Judge Dale, who reveals what the courts and the legal system are really about. Now, legal is about contracts that these corporations make, their rules and their regulations, which really don't have effect on us. And Sean, I'll just tweak what you said by reminding everyone that they do respect your free living breathing flesh and blood self if you can assert that self instead of enjoining your legal fiction with enjoining your real flesh and blood body to your legal fiction all the time. So when you can declare that as your real flesh and blood self, you are not consenting to these rules and regulations that they issued through their corporation. There's no reason you have to. The only way they can revoke and, what are they going to do? You put in an air conditioner and they'll fine you? They cannot fine your flesh and blood body. They can only fine your legal fiction. So you have to be aware of the difference. Lawful and legal are not the same. Lawful is common law, and there's a very good documentary. I want to let people know about my blog. If you go to sofiasmallstorm.com and you spell Sophia with an F, you will get my blog page directly. And I've put up a series of things now recently, and you can watch and listen to all of this. But first and foremost, the documentary, The Nature of the Cage, Straw Man, The Nature of the Cage, made in Britain, very recently released, that will explain what they've done. And it explains that lawful is common law. It's the law of the land, and it's very simple. It's very straightforward. There are basically three things. Don't breach the peace. Don't cause anyone harm or loss or injury or their property. And don't use fraud in your contracts, in your agreements. And I say all the time to people, since we've gotten so transient and fluid in our collectives, in our societies, we don't know the people we see every day. I see hundreds of people every day that I'll never see again and I've never seen before. So when we make agreements with each other, when I look in the yellow pages and I call a plumber, I don't know him personally. They give us this thing called the legal system that we believe we have at our disposal should something go wrong with our agreements with each other. We make contracts with each other. We sign contracts with them. And we think we can turn to this legal system, which is not really helpful. It's just a way to make one of us pay. And they make money on top of it all, So legal is about statutes, excuse me. I've never thought I'd make that mistake, and I did. The laws of society. And there are hundreds of thousands of these statutes and codes and things. We can't possibly know about any of them.
Right.
So legal is about contracts. You've got to sign these contracts before you're bound to them. And most important, you have to know what's in that contract you're signing. So we don't know that. You sit down with notaries and you have to sign forms and it's pages and pages and pages and they say sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here. It's all standard. It's all boilerplate. But the thing is, mistake is a remedy, as I learned. Now I'm going to talk about another series of interviews and it sounds, way too long. Oh, I don't have the time. But it's so easy to listen to. This is the Joyce Rosenwald series that's also on my blog page. It's titled Parens Patriae, Government as Parent. And it's through that doctrine of Parens Patriae that I've talked about before, where the state, the government, can declare you unfit to act in your own name, advocate for yourself. For instance, they'll declare you mentally incompetent. Children are considered minors and not mature, so their parents sign for them. And if their parents are deemed irresponsible by the state, then the state gets jurisdiction over the children. That's all doctrine of Parens Patriae. But it's only through that doctrine, through the straw man, the legal fiction, that any of these agencies, the state, the government, the courts can touch us. This is our power.
Yes, I agree. It is our power, but here's one of my concerns I want to share with you. I want to get your thought on this. How do people effectively take advantage of that power when the government is criminal. And I want to back that up with this segue to sovereign citizens, because I think there's a relation here, and I want your thoughts on it. An FBI law enforcement bulletin was released in September of 2011, and the title of it is Sovereign Citizens, a Growing Domestic Threat to Law Enforcement by the FBI's Counterterrorism Analysis Section. I could read it to you, but I think I'd bore the audience. You guys can check it out for yourselves here. I'll post it in this video. When the government wants to demonize, quote-unquote, sovereign citizens, Sophia, how are we to take advantage of our power? Because the government's criminal, and they're not going to respect any of the actions a person takes, unless I'm off base. You tell me if I am.
I think they've muddied the word sovereign. Remember that they're constantly defining these terms themselves. Income is a particular definition. It doesn't mean the money we earn. Income is another thing altogether. Same with employers, same with this word sovereign. Now they've redefined payment, for God's sake. Payment, if you can believe it. And it's all about the context. They cannot argue on the basis of flesh and blood. They can't do that. I mean, here's how the state of Ohio defines person. Okay, Sean, if I said, hey, what's a person? You'd say, well, it's a man or a woman or a child, or right? No. Person, the corporate statute for the state of Ohio, and California is just the same. Person includes an individual, corporation, business, trust, estate, trust, partnership, and association. In California, it's a limited liability company as well. Now, we have to understand the meaning of includes. In legal language, includes isn't what you and I think. If I say my, junk drawer includes keys I don't know the use or purpose of, various, odds and ends, paper clips, bits of string, that gives you the impression that my junk drawer has a lot of stuff in it, plus all of that stuff I just named, right?
Right.
But in legal language, includes means what follows in this list that's coming up right now. And that's it, and that's all. So, state of Ohio, person means individual, corporation, business, trust, estate, trust, partnership, and association. What is individual? It doesn't say a man or a woman or a child. So when you appear as a man, a woman, in flesh and blood, are they ever going to write that flesh and blood women are a terrorist threat? Who? Which ones? Everyone? They play with words.
I don't even know how to respond because I agree with you. I agree with you, Sophia. They play with words. They control words. They control society through their symbols and their words. And these courts, which go back to the British Empire, are just a way to control the masses because the masses don't understand the courts. I mean, even the lawyers operate under language which was given to them from the Brits. I mean, you get yourself an attorney to represent you, and he's representing the fictional you. And
that's right.
I'm not sure how to get ourselves out of the mire. I mean, my God, it's hard enough to wake up our friends, neighbors, and colleagues to the Federal Reserve fraud, to the monetary fraud, to the false flag terror. How in the world do we wake people up to this and get them to take action in any sort of effective way?
Well, Sean, it has to start, I think, from the beginning. We have to stop, using their Federal Reserve notes. We've got to start with barter. We've got to start knowing each other, doing quote unquote business, that's their word, with each other through handshakes, the way it used to be. And we've, in a small community, if I agreed to re-roof your house and you said you would give me a cow in exchange, then if I did one thing, my thing, and you didn't do your thing, guess what? You wouldn't get very far. Nobody would make agreements with you because you would be known for not keeping yours. So today, we have to somehow get back to that. We have to get people to do things for us by agreement and keep our agreements. And our societies are very large now. Our networks have gotten very, very large, so it's going to be hard to do that. But if we keep signing contracts, if we keep running to court to get restitution, I urge people to read that Lawfully Yours booklet. There are ways to negate traffic tickets, jury summons, all kinds of stuff. There's actually on Anti-Corruption Society these little index cards that you can print out. I do not consent. You can carry them around with you. So we have to learn to operate with our own 2 feet, our lungs, and our intention. We have to stop just sitting around and worrying about how dark and awful it all is and how bad it's getting worse and worse and worse, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree, and we all need to take personal action in the ways that we can. I always like to say, if you liked this interview, if this resonated with you, share it within your own sphere of influence. We need to wake up our friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Most of these people, most of the people around us, Sophia, are still sound asleep. They don't even understand that the Chinese are actively selling treasuries. They don't understand that an economic collapse is surely coming to our shores because the dollar reserve currency, the petrodollar reserve currency status is quickly coming to an end. They don't understand the basics, so it's going to be very hard for them to understand how to take action in this particular case. But may I bridge to something else? I want to get your opinion on something that's related.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about Sandy Hook. And now recently we've seen this Virginia reporter shooting of Allison Parker, whose supposed boyfriend is a guy by the name of Chris Hurst. It's now been revealed that she had apparently a real relationship, a real boyfriend by the name of Daniel Woltz, as the photos on Facebook have bared out, a long-term passionate relationship with this man named Daniel, whereas Chris Hurst, the relationship seems to be, and the postings seem to be far, far fewer and far, far more recent, which leads many to believe that he and the man playing Allison's father are just actors.
Right. So I've been holding this book, and this has been something that has become almost a prop now to show my love for her.
Now, that sounds insane, but based on the fact of what we saw happen at Sandy Hook with the Sandy Hook event, Sophia, my question to you isn't, do you think the Virginia reporter shooting is a hoax? My question to you is, if it is a hoax, is this all part of the same enormous deep state activity that we've really just described here? Because as you know, the U.S. has repealed its propaganda ban. The U.S. government was not allowed to use propaganda domestically because of the Smith-Mundt Act. And as reported by Foreign Policy in July of 2013, the U.S. repealed that propaganda ban, and now this deep state, this criminal government, uses propaganda actively, domestically, against its own citizens, against the people. And it leads me to wonder if Sandy Hook and if a lot of these shootings aren't just purely propaganda being orchestrated and pulled off for the purposes of, in this case, gun control.
I think the tide will turn. There will be a point where we in this society have decided that enough is enough. I hope and pray that this is the event that causes that tide to turn.
I'm not going to let this issue drop. This is, we've got to do something about crazy people getting guns.
What is your take on what I've just said?
Well, look, propaganda follows something. The initial event, if we're going to question its nature, its real nature, that's where we have to start. So I watched a YouTube, this Allison Parker's supposed boyfriend. And what does he say? He had been together with her for a number of months, and he says,
we were living the dream, and that dream was shattered. For our 6-month anniversary, we didn't have enough time to have an anniversary, so all we could have were month anniversaries. She made me this scrapbook and said that we were the cutest, newsiest, prettiest couple ever, and we are.
We didn't have enough time to have an anniversary, so we had month anniversaries.
Right.
We celebrate not anniversaries, but month anniversaries.
You know what that reveals to me?
What?
There's a plan. Why would you say, oh, we don't have the time to have an anniversary? What he knew and what he was saying, the subtext was, we knew that the game was going to be over because she is supposed to be shot before a year is up. So we have to have month anniversaries because we don't have the time to have an anniversary in this fake relationship. You understand?
Yeah, I do understand, and I watched that video, and the other thing that really I found shocking about what Chris Hurst, the supposed boyfriend of Allison Parker, was saying in that video is he kept showing the photos, saying
it was a white-hot relationship.
And he said it repeatedly in interview after interview after interview, as though it was scripted. And he didn't emote in any sort of way that would make you believe that he actually loved this person. And I need to tell you this, Sophia, I'm finding out as we're recording this interview that her memorial, the memorial for Allison Parker, is going to be private. Again, like Sandy Hook, we're not going to see any forensic evidence. We're not going to see a body. We're not going to see any of the things that would suggest that this was an authentic event.
Right. So we have to question the nature of the event. And your opinion of whether he emoted enough or not enough is just your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But if indeed these things are structured, paid for by contract, that's what we have to find out. So earlier you said, where is the money coming from? Is it not showing in the CAFR? Is it hidden? What funds do they put this money in for these events? What reserves are held? Because these events cost a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then lots is paid out. Mm-hmm. Rewards are given. And the people keep recirculating. There's a picture of this woman, Allison, who taken from the Boston bombings, a profile in which you see that she has quite a different nose, but it's the exact same jawline, ear, and the nose could be some kind of appendage that was put on for the Boston event, or she could have had rhinoplasty in between, but it's otherwise very much the same person. So why are these people always showing up everywhere? And my question is, how do they participate in these events over and over without understanding or being aware of what the unfolding is on the rest of the country? They have to know that they're acting. They have to know that it's going on TV and such is being said. So what's going on in their mind? Do they have alters? Is it mind control? So on this subject of mind control, I just want to say something that is going to sound really, really weird. And it is striking. So I have to be very bland about who and where and what. But let's just say I know someone who knows someone who was hired by one of the Sandy Hook families personally, to do certain kind of work in their house. And this particular hiree did not know anything about Sandy Hook as a hoax or any of that. And she did feel that there was something wrong with the setting, that it wasn't a real marriage, it wasn't a real family. Now remember, she's not working in the context of this family in Sandy Hook. This family had already left. Most of those families have left Sandy Hook. They don't live there anymore. So this particular hiree mentioned to the person that I know that one day she asked the wife in this couple, so what does your husband do anyway? And the woman just balked. She just got all confused and said, I don't know. And then she said, I can't remember. Which, don't you think that's a bit weird for someone who's married to someone? You say, I don't know what he does, I can't remember. When we knew very well what this particular man did in the Sandy Hook story. Everybody, all the Sandy Hook researchers could just roll that off their tongue instantly. And his own wife couldn't? So that's where I think these people have some kind of alter thing going on. Where in the story they're triggered and they can stand in front of the cameras and weep and carry on and explain all the tragedy and how awful it was and the birthday party they had before their little boy or girl died, and then they can't remember any of that in the not Sandy Hook context. Come on.
Huh. Yeah, and my first impression is that they're CIA agents, but if that were the case, then that cover story should come quickly.
Yeah. So there's some natural division between the real person and here we go again, a fiction.
Well, that's interesting, Sophia. And I'll tell you, I think you guys mentioned in that Mike Williams interview, I think you talked about the fact that when the Sandy Hook event was done and complete, all those families just moved out. And I think it was Mike who said, like, job over, contract done, off they went.
Right. Contract done. Exactly.
So this family relocated, and there's certain facts that you know about them, which appear to no longer be the case in their new environment, including the backstory, which the woman couldn't even come up with when asked.
Exactly. They're still using the same name that they used in Sandy Hook, but she can't remember what her husband does. It's really pretty amazing.
Well, that is amazing. And the other thing that comes to mind as you talk about funding these types of operations and contracts, we have to remember that the Pentagon has now revealed that it cannot account for $8.5 trillion going all the way back to, I think, 1996. And so a lot of malfeasance and a lot of shenanigans and a lot of black ops can be bought and paid for with $8.5 trillion. And that goes well beyond the CAFRs. So I'll tell you what, we got our back up against the wall with this deep state. And all we can do is explore these issues and talk about them, because we still have a First Amendment and, thank God, a Second Amendment. And as long as we have both, we ought to have the freedom to explore these issues. But they're dangerous, scary issues, Sophia, and I give you so much credit for going as deep as you've gone in the past. Again, 9/11 mysteries, unraveling Sandy Hook in 2, 3, 4, and 5 dimensions, and from chemtrails to pseudo-life. This is groundbreaking work revealing what's really going on behind the veil. And I just want to thank you for it. I want to thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you for looking into as many things as you look into and having all these shows. It takes a network of people, and that's what we have to start rebuilding. We have to start involving each other in the supply and demand nature of our lives. What do you have that I need? What can I give you for it? If we can network with each other, there's an old code, Hammurabi's code. It's Babylonian, 1754 BC, and it says that only equals can contract. And that's another thing that we are not. They're not playing fair with us, because we are not being contracted with as equals. We are being taken advantage of. We don't know that when we are asked by the judge, do you understand the nature of the charges against you? We are saying yes, like, I'm not an idiot. Yes, I understand. But that is another admission that we're submitting to the jurisdiction of the court. We're standing under. So these word games are not fair. And we can sit here and cry, not fair, not fair. But the fact is, we never engage except with our own consent, our signature, our appearance, our acceptance of an invitation that they proffer to us. So we have to learn to recognize what their invitations are. And then we can move forward in a new way based on that.
Yep. I'm nodding in agreement. I'm thinking of a monopoly board that they've set up, they control, they own Park Place and Boardwalk, and the rest of us are willing players, and we live on Baltic Avenue. We're willing players in their game, in their charade, and all we can do is fight back, wake up, and move on, because I do think that there is an enlightenment happening with humanity. There is a great awakening that's occurring, and it's a true blessing, because I've said this time and time again, Sophia, I believe that spiritual warfare is alive and well on planet Earth, and it's never been more evident. My God, just look at the 2015 MTV Video Music Awards. It couldn't be more satanic in its overtone. And this is what they're doing to our children. This is what they're doing to our families. This is the type of information these corporations are putting out. And I just think it needs to be said, because I believe spiritual warfare is alive and well. We have to wake people out of their slumber on this thing.
Right. And that too is by consent, Sean. People will wake up if they want to wake up. And
Right.
if they want to remain asleep, they're going to be whisked into, they're going to be compressed into their own legal fiction, their own dead self. The zombie society, you're seeing it. You're seeing everybody turn into their legal fiction.
I've told my friend Chris the exact same thing. People can't wake up until they choose to wake up. I've said it in many interviews. Why can't we wake up our friends, neighbors, and colleagues? Because most of them don't want to wake up. It's too painful. They want to cling to their normalcy bias. It's too painful to think that your government's criminal. It's too painful to think that your government won't be there for you in your golden years. It's too painful to think that your government could be behind false flag operations. But there it is. That's why we have these conversations, because it's our job, Sofia, as you well know, to shine the light of reality on this world, because so many people are living in complete and total fiction. Again, Sofia, thank you so much for your time. And could you remind us where we can get more information? Did you say the site was anticorruptionsociety.com?
Yes. You can, if you would like, I would suggest you start with my blog page, sofiasmallstorm.com. Just watch the recent posts all about corporate government. You can start with a very, very well done Australian documentary called What the FUQ, Frequently Unasked Questions of the Australian Government. This guy tried to import a car and went through all kinds of crazy demands for ridiculous sums of money for the air conditioner in his car. So that will tip you off that there are two governments in Australia. There's a real Commonwealth of Australia of the people, and then there's this fake one that's registered on the trademark. It has a trademark in Washington, D.C. So that is a corporate entity posing as Australian government. And remember that it's criminal to pose as a government official when you're not. So that's where you can start. Watch some of the other things that are strung above that post. You will get the picture very quickly, and I promise you will be entertained at the same time, because it's terrible to have to submerge yourself in boring, headache-making information. This is not headache-making. You're going to go, oh, wow, I can't believe this. Who can I tell?
Yeah.
And Sean, I also want people to know that I'm doing a little commerce here. When we start putting minerals back into our bodies, we get a different sensation. Our spirit awakens. Our resolve starts to reappear. And so I really urge people to start looking into iodine and magnesium, which you can get in the form of, there's a great cream I sell on my website. Start using magnesium cream. I'm going to add the magnesium oil. Look at the iodine. It's on the health tab, avatarproducts.com. Once you start taking iodine, everything changes. Your body just wakes up. It goes, okay, I feel like I felt when I was a little kid. What can I do today?
Yep, that's right. Hey, I was going to mention your website, avatarproducts.com. We have a little banner, a little box ad for it on the right side of SGT Report that I put up there as a favor to Sofia. So check out avatarproducts.com, Sofia's commerce site there with natural health and natural remedy solutions. Sofia, thanks again for your time. We certainly do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Sean. I'm always happy to be on your show.
Guys, I want to thank you all for supporting us at sgtreport.com, thelibertymill.com, and thephaser.com. Real news 24/7. Thanks so much for listening and sharing this interview with those you care about. Have a great week.